Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. In a recent video, I made some comments about how no one can really relate to Anakin Skywalker because of his over-the-top backstory. The miraculous birth without a father, being a child slave with a bomb implanted in his head, and then finding out at the age of 10 that he's the chosen one. Not really relatable, but I have to admit I probably spoke too soon because there are some things about Anakin that I've seen over the years that have become more and more relatable to me. And it's a side of Anakin's personality that is just not talked about enough. So let's pull out a little high school psychology to try to explain this side of Anakin's personality. In 1943, psychologist Abraham Maslow proposed this theory known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, it explains human motivation as a progression through 5 levels of needs, which is displayed in this pyramid-like shape. The idea is that people must satisfy the lower and more basic needs before they can focus on higher and more complex ideas. Eventually, this leads to self-actualization. Now, this pyramid isn't some kind of universal law. You can think about it more as a useful framework for thinking about motivation and what drives us to do things. It's more of a philosophical exercise than a scientific one, as different cultures and different people might also have a slightly different order in which they place their needs. I remember seeing this chart either in high school or in college, and as a young man, it really resonated with me a lot because, growing up, I was an only child. I had like an okay childhood, but I was oftentimes just by myself. I was pretty lonely. And so the third level of the pyramid, this idea of love and belonging, has always been incredibly important for me. Having a girlfriend, getting married, and starting a family was something I prioritized at a pretty young age. When I started this channel, I was just a kid. I was in my 20s, and I felt indestructible. Whether I was motorcycling in remote corners of the world, snowboarding in blizzards, or just getting caught up in revolutions and uprisings. I'm still a kid mentally, but now I have a family that actually depends on me, which is just kind of crazy, for them. Which is why I've also now taken my health a lot more seriously. Finding a family doctor and developing hopefully a lifelong relationship with them is a major goal now. Of course, it's not really easy to find a family doctor anymore, especially nowadays where becoming a plastic surgeon or a specialist is far more lucrative. But that's where today's sponsor, ZocDoc, comes into play. It's a free website that works like a search engine for trusted high-quality doctors and specialists. You can filter by the type of care you need, your insurance, location, and even availability, so you're not waiting weeks for help. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across nearly every specialty. From mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much more. I've used ZocDoc many times over the years to find doctors in my area, and I really appreciate the ratings and reviews that help me choose the right provider. Little extras like being able to do your intake paperwork online instead of when you arrive for your appointment are a great plus. ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. You don't even have to talk to anyone. Just book with a few clicks. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/GenerationTech. Also linked in the description down below to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Thanks again for ZocDoc for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to it. As a young man, I oftentimes felt like life was meaningless. Not that I hated my life or anything like that, but I was just kind of going through the motions, And everything kind of changed for me when I met my wife more than a decade earlier. I suddenly had all of this motivation to better myself. It wasn't anything she asked me. I did this voluntarily. So I quit my job as a delivery driver for a pizza restaurant. I started working on my skills. I developed the career. I built up my finances. And again, these were things I never really cared about much before I had this relationship. Now, not everyone is wired like I am, obviously, but when I see a young Anakin become flustered around Padme and being goofy as hell and how he interacts with her, it's kind of painful because it reminds me a lot of a younger version of myself. This is probably why I tend to make fun of him a lot. You could say that I used to be a pretty hopeless romantic when I was younger, and seeing Anakin crash and burn like that is just, it's very cringy for me. It taps into some very deep insecurities I have about myself. But I get Anakin. I understand why he chooses to pursue this relationship with Padme, despite the fact that the Jedi are not allowed to have such attachments, despite the fact that Padme Amidala is no mere commoner, but a very visible and important senator. The pragmatic side of me understands how foolish it was for Anakin to pursue Padme. He should have just done what the other Jedi in the Order do, go to the underworld and have, non-committal relationships with a professional in a brothel, That way, there is no attachment. There's no dependence for the Jedi employer-backed healthcare plan. Everything goes smoothly. So what makes Anakin take such a difficult path? His relationship with Padme isn't just about, intimacy. There's something deeper there. And I think it definitely has something to do with being born a slave and having no sense of value for himself, no sense of belonging. Sure, his mother was a sweetheart, but she also was a slave and barely able to protect Anakin from the harshness of that life on Tatooine. Which is why when granted an opportunity to give her son a better life, she takes it, even if it means that she'll never see him again. It's an extremely selfless move that is clearly done out of love, but it also traumatizes Anakin deeply. To be ripped away from the only parent, the only source of comfort and love you've known your entire life at that age can damage you in ways you won't begin to understand until you're older. And then to add insult to injury, Shmi Skywalker dies alone, brutalized by a bunch of savage sand people. And Anakin, of course, is too late to help her. By the time Anakin becomes a teenager, he is so utterly alone. The Jedi provide him with structure and purpose. His master Obi-Wan Kenobi provides him with guidance. But no one can fill Anakin with the affection and validation that the damaged slave boy inside of him needs. Damaged Slave Boy. That's another good band name if you guys are looking for one. Anakin desperately needs Padme because he's never had the foundational security or emotional support that a stable family life can provide, and this emptiness fills him with rage, anger, fear, which makes him very easy to manipulate. Now, the relationship between Anakin and Padme isn't exactly a healthy one, I have to point out, and one could argue that what Anakin feels for Padme, at least initially, is not really love, it's more akin to obsession. After all, how can you love someone you hardly spend any time with? Both Anakin and Padme are so busy trying to save the galaxy, I think they rarely ever had a chance to sit down and talk and get to really know each other. In the novels, they would actually occasionally sneak to the underworld and they would attend illegal races, but again, not many opportunities to talk. The difference between love and obsession is pretty subtle, and oftentimes young folk in the throes of passion mistaken one for the other. Love is driven by care, respect, and genuine concern for another person's well-being. You value them as a whole person, and this only comes through shared experiences and, again, getting to truly know someone inside out. Love doesn't require intimacy. I mean, technically, you don't even have to meet the person face to face. We've all heard of those beautiful relationships people develop in chat rooms with people over the years, or better yet, as characters in an MMORPG game like WoW. In some ways, those relationships might be the most purest forms of love because there is no physical attraction. You're just attracted to how a person thinks and how they talk and what's really inside of them. Obsession, on the other hand, is really driven by control and neediness. And it's really about what the other person gives you rather than you valuing who they are. We all want Padme in the combat suit at our side because it would make us feel awesome, but Padme is far more than just that one character. I mean, she also has a brilliant mind. She's ruled an entire planet before adulthood by this point, and was one of the most staunch defenders of the Republic and democracy in the late Republic era. Now, the fact that Anakin was a vehicle for tyranny and helped destroy all that she stood for shows us his complete lack of understanding of who Padme is. Because, again, Anakin was thinking about how Padme made him feel and not the other way around. Now, we shouldn't be too hard on Anakin because his obsession is driven by a lot of different stressors. I mean, the Sith are constantly manipulating him. He's fighting in a war. He has the Jedi on his back. He has a lot of things to worry about. And plus, he has that really traumatic childhood that really kind of holds him back. Anakin has feared abandonment and loneliness all of his life. I mean, he was a child combatant, for God's sake. He's seen far too much death and violence to be completely stable. He's killed plenty of people as a child. Most of us probably would have cracked in Anakin's situation, but he's extremely resilient. But that doesn't mean he's not completely damaged and messed up internally. He clearly is. And so when he sees Padme, he kind of projects onto her this unattainable idea of stability and love that he's been chasing his entire life. Now, having said this, I think Padme and Anakin still would have worked out in the long run. Obsession can turn into true love if they actually get to spend more time with each other, if the Sith are removed from the equation, right? I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi appearing on the gangway on Mustafar like he's a contestant on Mari's Who's the Baby's Daddy definitely didn't help either. And I think all things considered, if you take a look at Anakin, he wasn't the worst husband in the world. He had his moments, for sure, but he really did care and protect Padme. And I think had they actually gotten the chance to actually try to have a real relationship, she could have really healed him in a lot of ways, made him feel more secure about himself, more worthy of her affection, of having just a simple and good life. He doesn't need to be the chosen one. I don't think it's something that Padme ever asked of him. But for this to happen, Anakin really needs to be removed from the Jedi Order and from the war. Because as mentioned before, his personality, his experiences made him incompatible with their restrictive system, which treated him more like a dangerous weapon rather than the terrified child that he is. He was constantly being traumatized and placed in dangerous and life-threatening situations, and when he needed love and understanding, all he got was the Jedi code and disapproval because he was an emotional person. The Jedi might not even be wrong to ask their force-wielding maniacs to control their emotions, but Anakin definitely wasn't a good fit for this system. So let's say Obi-Wan Kenobi does the right thing here. After realizing that Anakin has fallen for Padme, he puts his Padawan's well-being above the Jedi Order's needs and advises the young man to do what he could not, which is to leave the Order for love. Remember, Obi-Wan Kenobi had told Septine Kryze that he would have left the Jedi if only she asked him. But unfortunately, both individuals chose career first, and that opportunity slipped away. Helping Anakin connect with Padme would have been a great way for Obi-Wan Kenobi to honor their lost love. I also think Qui-Gon Jinn would have been okay with this. I mean, he told Obi-Wan Kenobi to train Anakin. He didn't need Anakin to stay in the Jedi Order. I mean, Qui-Gon Jinn almost left the Order himself on numerous occasions. So in this scenario, Anakin and Padme do have the time to kind of take a break and focus on their relationship. They can actually talk more about their starkly different worldviews and their views on politics. As they become closer and closer, as they begin to understand each other more, they'll come to the point where they'll have to decide whether they want a kid or not. And I think this would have been a very important decision for Anakin. Having children is definitely not for everyone, but I think it uniquely fits Anakin's needs. And I think it would benefit him a lot. And on top of that, I think he would make a great father. Padme might be able to soften Anakin's edge a little bit, make him feel more complete, but he's still a very emotional and impulsive individual. He's prone to leaping headfirst into situations without thinking about consequences. This is because, like most young men, Anakin feels invincible, and considering his force powers, he might as well be. But having a child will teach him to be more patient. It'll teach him to feel vulnerable, because Anakin definitely doesn't fear anything when it comes to, something affecting him, but he definitely would care about the well-being of his child. He would feel a new type of fear, a new type of vulnerability that he's just not used to. And that might be a good thing for him. It would force him to slow down and assess situations in a completely different way. It would make him wiser, especially if he and Padme have a girl, I think. And there are a lot of signs that point to the fact that Anakin would have made an amazing dad. I mean, Anakin had a great capacity for empathy. And as a warrior, as a leader in the JAR, his men loved him because he cared for their well-being. Anakin was a bit reckless at times with his commands, but he always made sure that he was at the front, taking all the risks alongside his men. And more importantly, he never left a man behind. Even when it made no strategic sense, Anakin was more than willing to sacrifice the mission to save one soul. I mean, that's what makes him so lovable. And that side of him, this relentless loyalty to his brothers, really rubbed off on the 501st, making it one of the finest fighting forces in the JAR. They are really just a product of his empathy. Anakin's actions might be impulsive and chaotic at times, but he's proven through his military leadership that he can also be very disciplined and on top of things. And thanks to Yoda, when he becomes a mentor to Ahsoka Tano, Anakin takes the first step in having responsibility over another life. And he does an excellent job at mentoring. the young Snips. He genuinely cares for her in a way that most Jedi Masters refuse to for their own Padawan. When Barriss-Offee and Ahsoka were trapped beneath the rubble of the Geonosian weapons factory, it was Anakin who refused to give up. Anakin not only cared about Ahsoka, he made sure to prepare her for the battlefield. He was not satisfied with the Jedi's normal training regime, and so he developed his own training regime, and he was an excellent and balanced coach. Never too overbearing, never too critical, and always supportive. Which honestly is one of the most important things you kind of have to master as a parent. And perhaps most importantly, when Ahsoka decides to walk away from the Jedi Order, Anakin doesn't try to control her like he does with Padme. He respects her wishes and lets her walk away. That's real love right there. It's because of Anakin's wholesome relationship with Ahsoka that I know he's capable of making his relationship work with Padme. Again, he just needs to put the Jedi, the galaxy, all the wars, politics to the side, because he really needs to focus all of his attention on doing this. He's never done this before. Those are the stressors in his life that makes him feel insecure about his relationship with Padme. And it's because of his relationship with Ahsoka that I know Anakin will apply himself seriously to the job of becoming a father. And I have no doubt that he'll be terrific at that role. In many ways, he might even heal his own trauma and regain a sense of control over his life by helping his young one figure out their own life. A lot of the problems we see in Anakin are really just rooted in the trauma he suffered and the rigid hierarchy of the Jedi that he's exposed to for far too long. Anakin does have flaws, but he also has many positive things going for him. His moral intuition made him question the Jedi Order on numerous occasions. He wasn't just a blind follower, like in the case of the expulsion of Ahsoka. He's a terrific teacher, as mentioned before, with the clones and Ahsoka, and when he commits to something, it's almost terrifying what he'll do for the people he commits to. He so freely and completely throws himself into these relationships, and that's kind of what you want to see from a father. And that's the story I want to see. Anakin and Padme retreating to the Riviera on Naboo, raising a whole bunch of kids. And by teaching these children how to live, maybe Anakin can start to live and find some peace in himself. People who miss certain development stages or have messed up childhoods aren't doomed to fail. They just need some time to catch up, some peace and quiet, a supportive environment, friends, family, loved ones that can nurture them. What they don't need is to be thrown into an active battlefield. Yes, the Empire will probably still rise, the Sith will win and destroy the Jedi, but when the galaxy finally needs Anakin to step up and fight against Palpatine, he'll be 100 times wiser, he'll be 1,000 times more secure, he'll be 1,000,000 times more complete. He'll be a much more powerful Jedi. Throughout the expanded universe's lore, some of the most powerful Jedi had families. They had children that filled them with great compassion and love, not attachment. And because these Jedi had families, it made them stronger, not weaker, because it grounded them in the reality of their actions. You know, they weren't just these super beings running around saving the galaxy. They were moms and dads who had to deal with all sorts of things that really kind of put things into perspective. In Legends, Luke's new Jedi Order really understood that this was the way to go. And if you look closely at Anakin, I think this is what he's always wanted, to climb up his own pyramid of needs so that he could reach that self-actualization. But instead, the Jedi wanted Anakin to skip straight to the top and find self-actualization without building that foundation of being secure, of feeling safe and belonging. Generations of being unchallenged and almost godlike in their abilities made the Jedi forget the very human needs that drive every one of their members. And as the Jedi became less and less human, they started fearing, I think, emotions and the humanity of the members of their organization. And that's what ultimately led them astray, I think. The Sith used their fear, hatred, and anger to give themselves massive amounts of dark side force energy. But a Jedi can fortify themselves with the thoughts of their loved ones. Find calm, kindness, kinship, love. It's the only way some people have a chance at inner peace. Not all of us can make our minds a sunless place. Anyway, that's our video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.